traders, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, IPDATrader. Now in today's video I will be breaking down the entire 24-hour market cycle that the Forex market continuously repeats. However, it is important for you to understand that there's multiple variations within the cycle, and I won't be covering all of those because that would be a 5 to 7 hour YouTube video, and I don't think any of you will actually want to watch that. But I will be mentioning different key ideas and variations that have the higher probability of occurrence. So before we get started, I actually want to mention that I will be referring to different times throughout the day. So you need to understand that all the times I will be mentioning is purely based within the London time zone, right? So you will need to do the conversion yourself. Now that you understand what this video is about, let's actually get started. Okay, traders, with all that explanation out of the way, let's actually get started breaking down the Forex market cycle. Now, just so I can ensure everyone is on the same page, let's actually start by naming all the different sessions and the times, right? Because that's pretty important in order to understand the Forex daily market cycle. So the first session you will have is the Sydney session, which will start at 10 p.m. and ends at 12, right? It is a 2-hour window. The next session will be your Asian session, which essentially starts just when the Sydney session finishes. It will be 12 until 6 a.m. in the morning. It's a 6-hour session. Then you have your Frankfurt session. This starts at around 6:15 and ends at 7:30 a.m. After that, you have the London session, which starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 3 p.m. And lastly, we have the New York session, which starts at 2 p.m. and goes on throughout the remaining of the trading day. And then the Forex market repeats itself, and you start again with the Sydney session, and you go through the entire process once again another day. So let's now get into the specific characteristics and different chart ideas that you can recognize in order to frame your trade ideas. Let's actually start breaking the Forex daily market cycle down. Now I'm going to be using the example of a bearish day, and do not worry, we will get into the charts once I finish the entire process, but this will take some time, so have some patience and take as much notes as you can and really try to gather as much information and value as possible. So as I said, I'm going to be using an example of a bearish day, but it would be the same thing for a bullish day, just flip the other way around, right? So let's actually get started. So let me print for you a potential Sydney range, Sydney session, right? So let's imagine this right here is your Sydney session, right? This bit of price action. So let's actually label it Sydney session, as we said, from 10 till 12. And this session is pretty important. The reason being is because during this time period is where the algorithm actually resets and a new trading day begins. And for that reason, what you will find is that most of the times you won't get much movement throughout this time window, right? Because the algorithm is resetting and it's getting ready for a new trading day. Great. Now that you understand that, it is also important to keep an eye on the Sydney high and Sydney low, because those are liquidity pools and you want to be paying attention to that. So as we said, we were doing the example of a bearish day, and let's imagine the Sydney session is printed already, it's already done, and now, as we said before, we would move on into the Asian session. So let's imagine the Sydney session is now done, and as we said, we have a bearish day in front of us. So what you will find is that the Sydney high will get taken first This is pretty important. You will get the Sydney high rated first into a important point of structure or liquidity or maybe imbalance, right? Essentially, the Sydney high will get rated first into a imbalance fail or liquidity grab to then go ahead and grab the Sydney low. And all this is happening during the Asian session, right? So let's keep printing the Asian session. Let's say, let's use a different color just to help you guys out. So this would now be your Asian session right here, right? This is your Asia high and this is your Asia low. And now let me give you some quick and key things on the Asian range, right? If you haven't watched my video on the Asian range, I highly suggest you do so because it has great and valuable information. But let me refresh some stuff. So what are important things inside of this range, right? We have the equilibrium point of the range, which is essentially the 50%, and you will find that you will have a lot of price interaction, right, in this region. Another important thing is that with probability, and this has a high probability, you will get this Asia low or high printed anywhere between 2:30 till 3:30 in the morning, right? Whoops, 3:30 in the morning. That's the time window for your Asia high or low, depending on how the range is actually developing. So yeah, that's pretty important and pretty powerful if I'm being honest, because if you know that you will with probability get one of the landmarks printed throughout this time, then you can actually frame trade ideas around that, right? If you see, for example, you have the Asian range coming down and you are approaching, for example, an order block here to your left, and it's getting close to this time window, then great. You know that this POI mitigation right here can probably be the Asia low to then continue up. And this is a key, and this is something that I've been using for a very long time, which has made me tons of profits, right? This is where you have time and structure and liquidity, everything lining up. And this is where you get those great trades. So let me actually get rid of this because I need the space. And if I can delete this, that would be great. Let me actually do that because I want to make it smooth as possible. So let me redraw it. Okay, this is not much better. So, okay, now that you understand that and you understand the importance of the midline within the Asian range, let's go ahead and continue with Frankfurt. If you have a bearish day ahead of you, as we've been talking all the time, Frankfurt with probability will rate one of both sides, right? During the time window of Frankfurt, one of the sides will get rated with a very high probability. So let's imagine Frankfurt kicks in and the Asia low gets taken out, right? Because in that particular daily cycle, the Asia high was protected. And again, there's ways to know how we with probability if the Asian high is going to be protected or not. And if you guys want me to make a video around that, I can do so. So leave that in the comments. Now that we're moving on into the Frankfurt session, let's imagine that, whoops, I don't need this. Let's imagine this is your Frankfurt session, the different color. Just as I said, you would get one of the landmarks liquidated. And yeah, there's not much to Frankfurt. All you need to do to know is that most of the times it will just liquidate one of both sides, right? Depending on what kind of day you're getting. But most of the times, let me actually write it down. Say Frankfurt goal of Frankfurt is actually liquidate one side of Asia. Nothing more, nothing less. All you need to be aware about when you're trading Frankfurt is that you actually want to get a move into the liquidation of one of both sides. Okay, so that's Frankfurt then, and that's Frankfurt right here. Let's continue with the London session, and I actually just noticed that I forgot to label the Asian session, so let me go ahead and do that. Asian session, right? So now Frankfurt is done, you're moving into the London session, and if you have the scenario where Frankfurt just rated the low and ignored the high, and you're in a bearish day, this is important. What you will find with London is that you will get a test of the midline or any POI around the midline. Now again, this is pretty powerful and important information, right? You move into London, London comes up, maybe tests some order block inside close to the equilibrium point of Asia, right? You come here, you test it, and as we said, we have a bearish day. You will then get bearish continuation. You will get bearish continuation throughout the London session. So let's use black for the London session. Whoops, not this. We want the square. And let me actually label it. This is your London session. And again, if this sounds pretty confusing, do not worry. I will open up the charts later, and we're gonna take a look at that as real price action. But for now, I need you to understand the key principles and concepts and ideas of each and every session, because that's going to be crucial to your trading. So now that we understand this is the London session, and since Frankfurt rated the low and protected the high, you know that London with probability is going to keep the high and is going to keep dropping lower. Great. And after this, as we said before, you've got your US session. However, there is a key time before that, which is with this London US cross. Wow, this is so tiny. I want to actually make it bigger. So give me a second. Just like this. There is a key time which would be 12. And that would represent London US cross. And depending on how much liquidity they actually gathered with the previous moves, you can get a reversal during this period of time, right? There's a probability that you can reverse and actually continue higher. But that's something I will keep for my private group, and I won't discuss that here. So let's continue, and let's actually move on to the New York session. And the New York session, again, if we are in a bearish day, in a bearish bias, what will happen is the same thing, right? Pre-New York will most likely, and we're going to use this color for New York, will most likely induce people to keep selling, right? Maybe have a little break below lows, and it will induce people to sell. But what you will find is that most of the times you will get and it's not going to be a progressive move up. It's actually going to be a huge move to stop all these people out, and then you will get the continuation, right? That would be your US session. Again, if London was bearish, you will probably get a huge liquidity grab just before the US session to then continue. Just because the market and the smart money and market makers, whatever you want to call them, they don't want the retailers to profit, so they will go ahead and sacrifice some capital to buy it all up to then quickly sell it all off, right? So yeah, those are the key principles within the daily market cycle. And again, this is just one of the variations, and in my experience, the most common one. There are multiple ones, and that would be just too much information to actually explain in a video. It would be pretty exhausting. So this will now be your session for a bearish day. Again, this is all an example of a bearish market cycle. And let's actually, before we move into the charts, review it from start to finish. So as we said before, let me actually grab black as a color. We start with the Sydney session, which is when the algorithm resets. And in this scenario, where you have a bearish day, as we said, you will get the high liquidated into the low. And that would be pretty much the Sydney session, right? It will just create liquidity on both sides of the market. Then the next session, which is the Asian session, will rate both sides. I've never seen the case where the Sydney high or low is protected. That usually won't happen at all. So you get the next session, which is Asia. It will rate the highs and lows of Sydney. It will create liquidity and it will create a range. As we said, you want to pay attention to the 2:30 till 3:30 a.m. time window and the midline, which is the equilibrium point of the Asian range. After that, you will have Frankfurt, which will essentially rate one of the sides. Doesn't matter if it's the low or the high, you need to create your story around that, right? So essentially Frankfurt, as we wrote here, the goal is to liquidate one side of Asia. Once you've done that, and depending on the situation, London may pull back to the midline or any POI around the midline and continue selling off. Then US, the London session, the New York session, just before it starts, it will do a huge liquidity grab, sacrificing positions and capital to then continue the sell-off in the intended direction. Okay, so I hope this explanation was useful. Oh, lastly, the London US cross, you can get a reversal during this period of time. That's a probability too. So I hope this was pretty useful. That's actually and not confusing, because I know this is not easy stuff, but this is pretty powerful information. So with that being said, let's continue with the charts and let's actually break one daily cycle down from start to finish. Okay, traders, for this last section of the video, I will be breaking down an example of a daily cycle. We're looking at Euro USD on a 15-minute time frame, and I will just try to look for a suitable example and apply the knowledge I just provided you before, right? So as I previously said, there's multiple variations. You're not going to get it exact right off the bat, but you need to practice this stuff. Once you start practicing this stuff, your eye will get accustomed to looking at those specific ideas and it will be much easier, right? But for now, let me try and look for a suitable example. By the way, these boxes represent the Asian range. You can use this indicator right here on the top left corner to get it. Just make sure to adjust it to your time zone so it covers, as I said, from 12 to 6, because that's the Asian session. Now let me find a good example where we can discuss some stuff. Okay, so okay, I see a good example right here. Let's break this day down, right? So as I explained before, your day starts with the Sydney session. The Sydney session begins at 10, so you go ahead and put a vertical line right there till 12. Great. Now that you identified your Sydney session, we can box it just like this. And now we can delete this and just make sure to account for the high and the low. And to be honest, what I would actually go ahead and do is label it, because it's going to help your eyes a lot. It's going to guide them. So now we know that this is the Sydney high and this is liquidity. This is the Sydney low and this is also liquidity. Now that we know that during this time, the algorithm is resetting and that's why you don't get any movements at all, right? It's just side by side candles. Now, Once the Sydney session is done, the Asia session begins. And as we can see, once the Asian session kicks in, we raid the high, right, into structure, imbalance right here, right, the distance between this wick and this, oh no, this imbalance actually got filled. So you only have selling during this period, and that's what you actually want to fill right here. You actually get that. And once you rate the Sydney high with probability, you can probably take a sell right here to rate the Sydney low, right? I tried trading this period of time multiple times, and just with the ideas of the Sydney high and Sydney low, you can get some pretty good trades, to be honest. So we rate the Sydney high into the Sydney low, right? Right here, you see how this symmetry lines up. We just reach below this low, which is the Sydney low. Okay, so now that you understand that, let me remove all this. Whatever, we create our range in Asian, and as we said, important landmarks of Asia, the midline. As you can see, we've got tons of price interaction at this point, and the time window of 2:30 till 3:30. So let's actually see if this lines up in this case. And yeah, as we can see, you get the Asia low printed right at 2:30, right? This is not random. This is not coincidence. This is actually how the algorithm operates, right? We create the the Asia low at 2:30 in the morning. We move up for the rest of the Asian session. Great. Now, after that, Frankfurt kicks in. And as we said before, the goal of Frankfurt is to raid one of both sides of Asia. So that's exactly what we get in the cycle, right? We get the Asia low raided right here until London. Right here, 8 a.m. This is where London opens. So far, we've taken the Asia low. We haven't taken the high. However, this Asia high is not protected by any means, right? In order for an Asia high or low to be protected, it literally needs to be sitting at the edge of the structure point. Literally at the very edge if you want the Asia high or low to be protected. So as you can see, Frankfurt kicks in, rates the low, London just retraces, and boom. As we said, we hit a POI right here close to the midline, and we moved down, right? However, in this case, we didn't get the London expansion where it breaks the Frankfurt low and keeps dropping. In this case, we actually got a reversal, which will be absolutely fine, right? As you can see, we've been getting compression here. That's a sign for you that maybe we're not getting the expansion further down. So yeah, that was just a quick guidance on how to trade the daily cycle, because it has very good moves, predictable moves, and your job as a trader should just be trying to catch one of those potential moves, maybe wait for your best opportunity and execute on that. But as you can see, these concepts actually hold weight and work. It's up to you if you want to study it, put in the time, put in the effort, and see the results, right? Now, I will be leaving my Telegram username in the description. If you want to message me, feel free to do so. I will be happy to have a chat with you and whatever you may need, right? So I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Leave a like and comment if you actually enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions or questions, I will be there to answer that. So I see you guys next time. Until that, I wish you good and profitable trading.